All right, my guest this evening is Joshua Grant. He's the creator of The Lost Boy. Um, it's kind of weird how I came to find, not really weird, but he sent me an email asking if he could, you know, talk about his comic book on, with me, and I checked it out, and I thought it was an interesting concept. So I thought he'd be a great addition to come on here and talk. So without further ado, let me bring him in, and we'll find more out about his comic book. Hey, how's it going?
It is going great. How's it going with you?
Well, sorry for the bit of delay, but we've already talked about the circumstances around the delay. But thanks for hanging in there.
No worries. We're all at the mercy of the kids these days.
All right. So, um, before we get started talking about the book, uh, do you remember the first comic book that you read, or it was, or the maybe one that kind of got you interested in the medium?
Yeah, you see, I kind of had a roundabout kind of like jump into comics. I was one of those kids that like started with like the '90s X-Men cartoon, and
Hmm.
the one with the catchy opening and all that, and I loved the X-Men and I loved Spider-Man at the time, and so those were like my go-tos. I just kind of went back and forth between it was like '90s X-Men is just kind of like where I was at. I loved Cyclops of all the ones. It's like everyone loves Wolverine, but I don't know why I like Cyclops. I thought Wolverine was mean or something. I don't know, but it's like it wasn't really any like particular like issue or anything, but it was just like that was it for me. And weirdly, I didn't know of like any of the other like bigger ones like the Avengers and stuff. I kind of like didn't know anything about the Avengers at the time. It was all like X-Men for me. And then I started getting into Captain America. I'm team captain instead of
Hmm.
instead of Iron Man. So and then yeah, just kind of from there I really kind of expanded ever since. And I'm actually weirdly a fan of Moon Knight of all the of all the people. He's a little bit more
No,
obscure.
that's not. I know a lot of Moon Knight fans. I've even read a few myself.
Nice.
I tend to think of him as kind of. I'm a big DC person, but I think of him more as the Batman Marvel person.
Yeah, that's me. It's like I fell in love with Daredevil, especially too, and it's kind of the same. It's like when it comes to DC, I'm DC. I'm just Batman, really. I'm one of
Hmm.
those, where it's just like I love Batman, and I just love that kind of grittier kind of feel of like
Hmm.
Batman, that justice and that struggle, and that's what I like about Daredevil and Moon Knight. Although Moon Knight's a little bit crazier, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit different.
So, what inspired you to want to make your own comic book?
Yeah, it's like that was kind of a weird choice, I guess, for me. I'm an author. I'm a best-selling author for novels actually, and so I write horror books and I write young adult like sci-fi and fantasy, and so I was doing that, and I'm still cranking away at that, and I've got like a million novels always in the works, but I don't know. It's just my oldest brother Nate is a huge comic book fan and a huge comic book collector. I mean, he's got like 3,000 comic books, and he's got we go to Comic Con together and do all that, and we dress up and we meet people and stuff. And so like just talking comic books with him, and he was working on a couple of comic books that he was kind of working on and still is, and just going back and forth, just talking with him, I was just like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to do like a comic. And then it all just kind of came together. I was like, all these weird things. Like I was like watching like the Dark Knight. Everyone loves the Dark Knight, and I just love the like deep look at justice and kind of gritty feel of that. And then I was also watching Karate Kid at the same time, and like I was like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to do this like moral story of Karate Kid meets like the deep kind of gritty nature of the Dark Knight and that kind of like realistic superhero. And then I
Hmm.
always wanted to do like I love video games. You can tell, I guess, with the shirt, but I love like Kingdom Hearts, and it's kind of like it's the weirdest genre. It like brings in like Final Fantasy characters, and it brings in Disney characters, which is like the weirdest matchup that doesn't sound like it works, but like it really works, and it kind of is fun to see like how the two, like who's going to show up next, you know. So I also
Hmm.
wanted to do something like that. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun, and like do something like that with like a fairy tale or something like that. And so it all just kind of like weirdly all mashed together and became this like superhero thing. And I was like, oh, Peter Pan as like a superhero. I was like, that sounds like a wacky idea, but I just kind of fell in love with it. It was just kind of like one of those things that like it got me where I was like, I was just thinking about it for a long time, and I was like, oh, that would look so cool. And I was originally going to like write it as a novel, but I'm like, superheroes, you know, it's like it's got to be a comic book, and it's got
Yeah.
to be like visual. And so I started working at that, and it's been kind of a big experiment, but I'm actually like I'm having a hard time going back to novels now that I'm doing a comic. So
So let's start. Let's talk about the comic. It's called The Lost Boy. You want to kind of give us the like a summary of it? Who are the characters and
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Just I guess visual for you, like the Lost Boy, right? So it's like uh, it's it's basically like a modern, gritty, realistic retelling of Peter Pan. And so it's like you got Peter Barrie, who's like this homeless kid, and oh, there you go, yeah, visuals. And so, but yeah, yeah, there's Peter Barrie, and he's this homeless kid, and he's like just trying to make his way in LA, you know, and which is something I actually wanted to like highlight with this is kind of that like all my books I give like 10% of them to like good causes, you know, and
Hmm.
like childhood disease and breaking the poverty cycle. And that's a big one for like LA and California in general. It's like has a big issue with like homeless youth actually. And so that's something I always thought would be cool to highlight with this. But but he's just trying to make his way and stuff. And then you have this like the mayor of the city, like J.M. Hook, and he's like this like mayor, but he's also connected up with the criminal empire, and it'll dive more into that as the comic series goes. But and like what his connection is and all that. And naturally like Peter sees something he's not supposed to see and ends up, you know, getting nearly killed anyways, and ends up getting connected up with a few other characters. Like ultimately, I guess one of my huge goals with this with characters is like highlighting character like everyone kind of knows like the Peter Pan story, you know, and it's like I wanted to kind of highlight a lot of the characters that were like in the original book because I read a lot, and so I've read
Hmm.
all sorts of books and classics and all that jazz, and there's a lot of characters in there. There's actually a lot of depth in that book that kind of gets missed and not a lot of people know. So I wanted to like hit more of like some of the side characters from like Peter Pan and focus on them and kind of make it almost more like a prequel.
Well, I read the first couple, the first I read the whole thing, but in the first couple pages, it starts off with a bang.
Yeah.
A lot of action happening.
Yeah. Well, and that was like weirdly, it's like this was a kind of an experiment for me until the first one honestly of the Lost Boy was kind of like my like almost like a pilot episode if you will, and it's like and so that was kind of like for me it was like figuring out the logistics of a comic book and what's even possible, you know. It's like when you're writing a novel it's like everything's possible, like I can write 700 pages and who cares,
Hmm.
and it's like versus a comic book it's like you build this weird intricate house of cards and like everything you do it's like you know it's gonna like costs money and also you have to like make it cool, so it's like really weird like trying to write something like that where it's like trying to like get as many people on a screen as or you know a panel at once and like trying to make it cool but also get everything that needs to be said. And I never done a comic book before, so it's like a novel you can just write whatever, whereas a comic it's like I've never done that before, so it's like for me it was like okay I got to kind of jump right in. And
Hmm.
now I'm actually going the opposite. Is like the first one was actually super successful, and I honestly didn't think. I thought it was more like my pet project versus like it's actually my number one
Hmm.
bestseller of all my books. And it's like so now it's like I'm kind of actually like really like expanding on a lot of what I previously wrote. I wrote the whole first season already, but
Hmm.
I'm going back and I'm like rewriting and expanding it so actually they actually get longer as they go.
Yeah, I was gonna, and you kind of answered it right there. I was gonna ask you about how being a writing a novel kind of translated for you to the comic panels, but you kind of talked about that
Yeah. Well,
now.
it kind of shows up. It kind of shows up in the script though. It's like not what everyone else gets to see, but like as I'm reading it, it actually reads like a novel. So it's actually the first one was really cool as an experiment for me. Like writing it like from a script, it seems like I'm writing a whole lot, and I'm like, oh, I feel like they're talking too much. But then when you actually read the thing, it actually like jumps along a little bit more. So now I'm like, oh, I could add more writing, and so because it
Yeah.
reads more like a novel when you read the script.
And tell me about your the artist on the book. How did you meet them? What was it about their style that appealed to you and made you want to use it for your writing?
Definitely, yeah. I was like, yeah. Searching for an artist was a fascinating process. You know, it's like I've worked with actually several artists. Like I've worked actually with like an artist from like IDW, like on a couple of novels doing like covers. So I was
Hmm.
like familiar with like doing a cover and familiar with working with artists, and actually supporting artists is actually a big part of my writing. I tried to like have all these projects for them. And so it's like, and I worked with another artist from the video game industry, a guy named Tyler Edlin, who worked on like Zelda Breath of the Wild for another novel, but neither of them were like necessarily like what I was aiming for this one. So I was like, I'm gonna have to go look for another artist, and I started with like Deviant Art. It's like you can find like
Yeah.
a lot of amazing artists on Deviant Art, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, and I just went like cruising through like a million different things, and but somebody randomly just told me like look on Fiverr, like it's like fiverr.com.
Hmm.
And I looked on that one, and honestly, I like their setup on there. You can see exactly how much somebody charges per page. And it's like, you kind of know exactly what you're getting. And that was the nerve wracking part for me for a comic. I'm like, I can't let this like balloon into this like massive, like expensive project, it's like versus like my novels. And so it's like, it was a big experiment with that, but I ended up, meeting with Mark Rossetti is the artist on the first one, and he's a great guy, and he lives down in Mexico, and but he like I just looked at some of his like previous art, and just you try to kind of gauge like, is that going to be good for this project? Is this
Right.
project good for them? Because that's important to me too. Is that they feel valued, and yeah, but he worked on some like Ghost Rider kind of stuff, and he didn't work with like Marvel on Ghost Rider, but he
Hmm.
does a lot of that, like prints and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Hmm.
And so this is actually one of his like first big actual like comic projects, and so it was kind of like I just kind of took a chance on him, and it worked out really great because it was a good project for him, and it was good for me as well, and I loved it. I loved the art, and then as soon as we published, he got picked up by WB Games, like the big video game company,
Yeah.
and it was like he had to sign a like not like this is what I'm working on, like nothing else. So it's like
Hmm.
a contract. So it's like I lost him the second we published, and he like wanted to work too. I was like no. So he did a few more like character art things for me for characters that haven't showed up yet, and then he's working with them now, and so I had to it kind of derailed me a little bit for a bit there. So I spent like a month like kind of searching for like artists that can have similar styles to that and also have their own style. And I found a guy named Nilazlo, who lives in Hungary, and he is fantastic. And he and I are working away at episode 2 and episode 3 right now of the series.
Now, have you done any like Kickstarters or anything to like fund it, or are you just kind of funding it, from your other works? Or
Yeah, I was like, I fund it. Yeah, it's like because I'm an author, and I get money through that.
Mhm.
I work a various bunch of other weird wacky things. I like to do a lot of weird side gigs, keep myself interested. I used to be a teacher, and I used to be an actor before that, but yeah, so I've been funding it off of some of all that stuff
Yeah,
and just out of pocket, but I did put up a Patreon of all things. It's like for people want to get involved and be like in on the art and stuff and have some different funding options there. I even have one for if people want to jump in and actually be drawn into the comic as a
yeah,
character if they ever want. I actually have an option for that as well.
yeah. I've kind of been looking into that for this thing. So, but So, uh, is is this series you're currently writing? Is it like a limited series, or is it like an ongoing, or
Yeah, it's
what's
kind of
the?
like almost a hybrid. It's like right from the get go for this season. I'm kind of doing like seasons episodes for the
Yeah.
fun of it. But it's like for this like for basically the first story arc, it's like it's 6 episodes. And I actually worked backwards in this series when I was writing it. And so I really like I had this idea of this great ending, and then I kind of worked my way back and like how do we get there, you know? And I it's kind of like it's like I said, it's almost like a prequel to Peter Pan in a way. It's like Hook still has both his hands, so how does he lose
Mhm.
his hand, kind of thing. You know, it's like that's kind of like where I wanted to go. Like, what is the meaning of each character, and like, and where do I want to go with that? And so I started there, and I worked my way backwards. So it's actually 6 episodes long. The first season, we only had the first one out, and then the second one's going to be out actually in about a week. And
Oh,
so it's actually going a little faster than I thought. And so, but it was just kind of exciting. But like, and so so the first season, if you will, is like 6 episodes, and then I have
hmm
2 more seasons after that. The second one's mostly planned already; it's not fully written yet. But and then so it'll be 3 seasons with this, and then I have a spin-off series that I think would be really fun to do. So if people are enjoying this, or if I'm still enjoying this, I can do this spin-off series for like 2 seasons I have planned for
hmm
that. And then I'm working on a different comic series now that's going to be down the road. That's more of a
yeah.
larger, more ambitious project.
Oh, nice. So it sounds like this is you're getting your feet wet with this, and then you have bigger plans, to expand, from just not just from just being a novelist to being a creator of comics too. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, is do you feel that it's helping you, writing for comics is helping you in your other writing?
Yeah, it's a weird way kind of derailed my other writing, I think. Like I've like I honestly I've fallen in love with working on comics, and so it's like I've kind of like set everything else sort of more on the back burner now. Originally,
hmm
this was more like my pet project, and was my like this was the back burner thing, but now I've actually kind of totally reversed that, and like it's hard to go back because it's like when you write a novel. It's like the fun part about writing a novel, you can just expand on everything, and then later you can just take stuff out. Whereas writing a comic is actually you really have to have the end product in mind, and so it's kind of hard to write that way because it's like you really have to know what you want to see for each panel, because if you change a panel, it's like pulling a card out of the house of cards. The whole thing tumbles and everything around it. You have to like rewrite every single panel, and it's like kind of a hassle. And so it's kind of it's really interesting. It's really fun. But like the really fun part about it is like when you write a novel, you honestly work on a novel for like a year or 2 years or something. I write a lot, and I write pretty fast. So it's like, and I'm always working like every day at stuff. So it's like, I can write novels pretty quick. Some people spend like 5 years on just one novel, you know, and I can't do that. I can't focus, but it's like when you write a novel, it's like you work really hard at it for like 2 years, and then you can finally get to see like the really cool cover, and it's finally
hmm
like real, you know, versus like a comic. It's like all along the way, I go back and forth with the artists, and like they're showing me like concept stuff or layout stuff, and it's like every day is kind of Christmas. It's like it's really cool to just come on and be like, oh, look at this, like that's what that looks like now, and it gets me excited, and then I get all motivated and I start writing. And so it's like it's really fun. And so it's like really hard to like go back to like novels are like deep, and I love it, and it's like I love writing, and it's like and expanding on things, but it's like it's hard to go back and kind of like toil in obscurity for like a couple of years, you know. It's
yeah.
like before you can actually like this is the cool twist I want everyone to see. I always put twists and everything, so it's like I want them to see that, but it's like with a comic I can get that out faster.
hmm So, um, what has been the most challenging part, for you during this whole process? I think again, I don't know if I'm asking you to repeat, something we already talked about, but you
No,
know,
well, yeah, it's like I guess the challenging, I was like, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but not that much. But it's like it's that like I said, it's just having to have that end piece in mind while you're writing it, and it's like
hmm
and the challenge is honestly part of the fun of it. Like I said, it's like trying to think like in this panel, it's like if we're having a conversation, you and I back and forth, every time I say something and then you say something, it's like kind of like making a movie. It's like you don't want to switch the scene way too
Right.
many times like because makes the audience dizzy for starters, but on top of that it's like you have to pay for literally every, it's like paying per panel, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
and I want to support artists, but I also have to make sure I can also sell it, because if you also make a comic too big, it's like, especially nowadays, like the digital market is like, I always make a paper version, you know,
Hmm.
so people can get that. But I also like, if you make it too big, you can't, you're going to have to make a too big of a price thing that no one's going to want to buy. Like I wouldn't want to
Right.
buy, you know, it's like, so it's like trying to make it small enough, but also big enough that it's like gets the story in there and it's cool and all this. And it's like, so that was the big challenge for me. And it's like also just, you know, it's like discovering everything. I discovered how to format a comic myself. I discovered like I literally had this like I literally had a ruler and I had like paper cutouts. I printed everything out and I paper cut it out and put it down. It was like measuring every piece, because it's like when you actually go to publish and format comic, I have so much respect for like Marvel and DC and everyone that's like done that in the past, because I'm like, there's so much that goes into like the dimensions and how much paper gets cut off and how much
Hmm.
goes into like the middle of the book, you know, to staple it. And it's just like, it's just, there's a lot of thought that goes into literally every single panel in a comic.
Now, have you been able to, well, besides the past, you know, what, 8 months, have you have you been able to get your book out, at shows and cons and stuff
You
like
know,
that?
well, I was like, I'm actually brand new to the business here. So it's like, when it comes to comics, it's like, you know, my other books I've done like, I actually haven't done like, I go to Comic Cons and like
Hmm.
different, you know, different ones. It's like, but I actually never, I always thought about getting like a booth and like showing off books and stuff. But it's like, when you're an author, like nobody knows you. So it's like they just kind of like it, when you're like an indie author like myself, even though
Hmm.
I'm a bestseller, but it's like that's not, I just kind of want to walk around and just like see everything myself. So it's like I don't
Yeah.
want to just sit there. But with so I told myself like one day if ever I have like a visual whatever, then that's what I'll do. So I was actually planning this year at Comic Con to actually have a booth and stuff. And then, you know, it's like then COVID happened, but it's like, but I've actually like I started this whole process of working on this whole comic back in February. And so
Hmm.
it's like it's from February to now, it's like it's been writing it and going to an artist and doing this whole process. So it's like it's actually I'm actually very new to comics, and it only got published back in June, late June. So it's like it's only been around for a little bit, and so I'm planning up ahead. You know,
Right.
hopefully
Right. Right.
when COVID's done, you know, it's like we'll get back to, you know, doing all the fun
Hope.
stuff.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, I have fun. You see, I want to dress up like I dress up like Jonah Jameson. I go to these
Yeah.
conventions and I just yell at all the Spider-Men, and it's a lot of fun because there's always like 300 Spider-Men. So I'm always like, "You're a menace," you know, and like, with
Yeah.
my cigar and stuff. So I want to just have a whole booth and I can just yell at every Spider-Man walking by.
Now, now, which cons have you gone to?
For me, as like I live out in out west here, and so it's just been like, you know, like Denver Comic Con and
Yeah.
Colorado
Okay.
Springs.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and so one day I'll get out there to you know, San Diego and you know, some of the big ones.
Well, I haven't been to San Diego, but New York is.
Yeah, you got the happening scene out there.
Oh, the big ones over here on the East Coast are, I would say, New York and probably Baltimore.
Yeah,
Baltimore's a little more friendly, is a lot more focused than New York, but they're still, both great cons.
yeah. Well, I'll get out there to New York someday, and you and I can go dress up as Jameson, and we can yell at Spider-Man together.
So what advice would you have for, someone trying to, I guess, break into comics, since you're
Yeah,
you're relatively new to the scene.
yeah. Well, you know what? I guess one of the cool things that I found with it is like that kind of got me excited is like it's not. there, like I said, there's a lot of thought that goes into everything, and I think you should just for your audience, if you're ever making a book of any kind, because I do this with my e.g. I'm an indie author for my novels, and it's just like
Mhm.
I'm never going to publish anything, and I'm never going to put it in front of somebody else until it passes like my really high standards. And for me, it's like what would I want to see, in a comic? If I went and bought a DC comic and I don't want to see like, just junk or something like that, So it's like, so if you're looking at getting into comics or you're in comics, it's like, like fall in love with your own work. It's like,
Mhm.
that's what made me write this in the first place. And that's why I had to make it, is because I was like, it was making me think about it constantly, and I was excited about it, and I still am really excited about it. And so it's like, you want to be in love with your own work and start there, because if you love it, 100 other people will love it. And you just gotta kind of believe in yourself and try stuff. Like, to be honest, I threw this out there thinking like nobody's gonna see this, and it's like, it's my really expensive like pet project. It's like my midlife crisis or something. but it ended up like really working. Like I was actually like number one in the nation for a bit for new release stuff and all this. And it's
Mhm.
like, so I was like competing with Batman, and then it got really fun because I'm like, ooh, I want to take down the Cape Crusader. And so like I get to be a villain for a bit. And so it's like, so if you're making one though, it's like really think through your process and be in love with your story idea before you start. But then like actually go and do it. It's like, it's not actually as hard necessarily as like I thought. You have to get kind of used to meeting with people, like this is like just having a conversation with people. It's like, it's awkward when you don't know people. I'm actually really shy myself, but like,
Same
but
here.
yeah, we're good. We're in the perfect meeting here. But it's like, you can do it basically, I guess is what I'm saying. Like step out and actually try. And I mean, I failed with my favorite book I ever wrote, honestly, is my least good seller. So it's like, it's not
Yeah.
always going to turn out good, but it's okay.
So has let's say that you're offered the chance to write for one of the major companies. Do you have a story that in which do you have a character that you would really like to kind of tackle, or think you have would have a interesting approach on?
Nice. I thought like it's a great question. I was like, I always thought about that. It's like, where it's like, oh, like I personally would actually have a hard time if like, say if like, DC or Marvel came up to me and was like, hey, we'd love for you to write this. For me, I'm like I love those things, and I have a hard
Hmm.
time writing with other people's like, IP,
Yeah.
and so it's like that would be hard for me. But I would love to do like try I like taking different takes on things, as you can tell,
Yeah.
like with Peter Pan, right? I want to take this like different take where he's a kick butt crime fighter and actually try to make Peter Pan a likable character, because I think he's annoying in most things. But like it's like trying to actually make him likable. Like, let's take a different approach. But like doing that, I would love to do something like that with like, say, Batman. Like try to take a
Hmm.
like a different approach to Batman, where it's like Bruce Wayne actually isn't Batman, like somebody else is, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I would also love to do, I always thought it'd be fun to do kind of like a more comedic series with Marvel characters. Like you always have like the uncanny X-Men, right? So I always wanted to have like the canny X-Men, like the
Yeah.
so-so ones that don't make like the number one team, like the side characters, like throw in Squirrel Girl or whatever,
Oh yeah.
it's like, but I mean, everyone loves Squirrel Girl, but like
True.
but I thought it'd be fun to have something like that. Instead of the Incredible Hulk, just have like the Credible Hulk, where he's just
Yeah.
kind of like, he turns blue because he's always sad or something.
So, was there anything else that maybe I didn't we didn't cover that you wanted to say, or do you want to give like a final pitch for your book, and where people can not only get your book, but where they can follow you like on social media?
Yeah. Hey, I'm always in for, shameless self promotion. I
Who
appreciate it.
who isn't?
Yeah, yeah. Where's that visual? Right here. Look. so yeah, I was gonna say. Well, I just want to say, hey, I appreciate you having me on. Actually, this is part of the fun. I love people, even though, like I said, I'm pretty shy. But it's like I really do love people and getting to connect with people, and
Hmm.
like having a real conversation like this, and just in something that we both love, which is comics, right? And so, but yeah, if you ever want to pick up The Lost Boy, it's on, it's sold through Amazon, so you can read it on Kindle or on your phone. You can also get a paper copy on Amazon, just looking up The Lost Boy, Joshua Grant. You can also find me if you're ever interested in me and my work on diabolicshrimp.com, which is my website. If you're an aspiring author and you want some support, my website is also open to authors as well. I buy people's books and I write reviews. I'm a professional reviewer as well.
And what are some of the what are some of your novels that you've written? You want to kind
Yeah. So sure,
of
I'll give you my visual examples. I got them right here. So yeah, I've got. If you like horror, I wrote a horror book about a cruise ship that disappears for a week and it comes back. It's called Pandora. So I
nice.
was jumping around there. And then if you're more into like this, like young adult sci-fi, it's not necessarily for everyone. But it's like the robot apocalypse. We have like Nexus here. That cover was done by the guy who worked on Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then yeah. So and I also. My other pet project recently that I don't actually haven't shared a whole lot yet since COVID times. I was going to go around reading books to kids, but I wrote my The Tale of the Onion Knight, Cool Trunk, and it's kind of my goofy children's book for kids about
Nice.
monsters in the fridge kind of thing. And so,
Hmm.
but yeah, I like to, as you can tell, I like to bounce around. I get on a story and I get stuck on it, and I'm working away. I've got 2 horror books and I've got several fantasy and sci-fi books, and now it's comic books, and then eventually I'll finish my horror series. So it's all kind of getting there, whatever piques my interest.
Well, you're welcome back anytime if you want to talk about any of that stuff.
Cool. Well,
And
I had a blast, Chad.
and if you want to send me your links, I'll be sure to include them in the show notes. And it was a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to see more from you. Um, and like I said, keep in touch. If you're always welcome to come back. Even if you just want to talk about random stuff, we can do that.
Yes, let's do it. Let's go yell at Spider-Man. He's a
Yeah.
menace.
All right. Well, I thanks for taking the time, and stay safe, stay healthy, and maybe one of these days we will meet at a in person at a con.
Yeah. You too, Chad.
All right. Take it easy. Have a good evening.
You too.